There was a time when a British motorway slip road felt less like an invitation and more like a dare. Through the 1980s, families queued at roundabouts in cars that wheezed rather than roared, gearboxes crunched through fog-grey Monday mornings, and overtaking was an act of faith rather than confidence. Britain built brilliant engineers and, sometimes, astonishingly unhurried machines. Some of these cars weren't just slow, they were legendarily, almost heroically slow cars that made a dual carriageway feel like an expedition. Today on Britain Rewind we're counting down 10 of them, the ones that turned every incline into a negotiation. And the car at number 1 barely managed to keep up with everyday traffic. Number 10. Austin Mini City E. By the late 1980s, the original Mini had been stripped back to basics, and nowhere was that clearer than in the City E, launched to keep the aging icon affordable. Buyers were often first-time drivers or those craving nostalgia rather than pace. Under that stubby bonnet sat a 998cc engine producing just 41 brake horsepower, paired with a 4-speed gearbox. 0 to 60 took a leisurely 19.7 seconds, with a top speed hovering around 84 miles per hour. Weight saving kept costs down, but for decades of development hadn't given the old A-series engine much more breath. Motoring journalists praised its character while gently mocking its urgency, or lack of it. Owners adored the charm but learned to plan overtakes well in advance. One curious fact, despite the sluggish figures, the Mini remained in production into the 1990s, proving that Britain's affection for slow cars sometimes outweighed its patience. But the next car proved that even a fresh design couldn't guarantee real pace. Number 9. Austin Allegro 1.0. Launched as British Leyland's answer to shrinking wallets during a punishing recession, the 1.0-litre Allegro targeted buyers who needed economy above everything else. Under the bonnet, a modest A+ engine produced around 44 brake horsepower, sending drive through a 4-speed manual. The result was a 0 to 60 miles per hour sprint stretching past 19 seconds and a top speed barely touching 80 miles per hour, heavier than its Metro cousin yet armed with less urgency. The Allegro simply couldn't disguise its weight disadvantage. Would you have trusted this to join a fast-moving motorway? Journalists were blunt, noting the car needed serious commitment to reach cruising speed. Owners often confessed to timing junctions carefully, aware that hesitation could mean a very long wait. Curiously, the Allegro's peculiar quartic steering wheel became more famous than its performance, a design footnote overshadowing an engine that struggled to keep pace with the decade around it. Yet the next entry made even this feel almost energetic. Number 8. Morris Ital 1.3. Essentially a facelift marina wearing new clothes, the Ital arrived in 1980 hoping restyled bumpers might disguise aging underpinnings. Family buyers and fleet managers, drawn by familiarity and low running costs, kept it selling steadily. Its 1275cc engine offered around 60 brake horsepower through a 4-speed gearbox, delivering 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 17 to 18 seconds and a top speed near 90 miles per hour. The chassis dated back over a decade, and cost-cutting meant no real power increase to compensate for the car's bulk. Reviewers were unkind, dismissing it as yesterday's engineering wrapped in tomorrow's paint. Owners, however, valued its unpretentious reliability over any thrill. Here's something few remember: the Ital name was reportedly chosen to evoke Italian design flair, styled in part by Harris Mann, though nothing about its performance suggested continental glamour. Could you have lived with that gap between image and reality? The next car belonged to a completely different British institution. Number 7. Reliant Robin. Few vehicles capture eccentric British ingenuity quite like the three-wheeled Robin. Designed for affordability and low taxation, it appealed to cost-conscious motorists throughout the decade. Its 848cc engine produced a mere 40 brake horsepower, sent through a 4-speed manual gearbox to the rear wheel. Acceleration to 60 miles per hour took around 13 seconds, respectable on paper, yet top speed struggled to exceed 80 miles per hour, and the fiberglass body's featherweight construction couldn't compensate for the tiny engine's limits. Owners frequently became folk heroes simply for driving one without incident. Journalists joked endlessly about stability, though performance criticism was equally common. Here's a fact that surprises many: the Robin's glass fiber body was actually praised by engineers for genuine innovation, decades ahead of mainstream lightweight construction thinking. Would you have dared overtake in one? If you're enjoying these forgotten British motoring stories, consider subscribing because there are many more remarkable vehicles still to come. The next entry brought the sluggishness back to something more conventional. Number 6. Austin Metro 1.0. When British Leyland unveiled the Metro in October 1980, hopes were sky high for Longbridge Super Mini savior. Ordinary families and first-time buyers queued to secure Britain's newest hatchback hope. Beneath the bonnet sat a familiar 998cc A+ engine, offering just 44 brake horsepower through a 4-speed manual gearbox. The result was a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of 22.7 seconds and a top speed of only 81 miles per hour. Despite modern styling, the aging engine simply couldn't deliver the pace buyers expected from something so fresh-looking. Reviewers praised interior space while criticizing outright performance, calling it competent rather than exciting. Owners often chose the Metro for its practicality, accepting the sluggishness as a fair trade. Remarkably, this same platform later spawned the fearsome MG Metro 6R for rally car, producing over 400 horsepower, an almost unbelievable transformation from its humble sibling. Could this really be the same car underneath? What followed managed something even less expected. Number 5. Austin Maestro 1.3 HLE. Arriving in 1983 as British Leyland's answer to modern hatchback competition, the Maestro promised efficiency without sacrificing space. The 1.3 HLE specifically targeted economy-conscious motorists during uncertain economic times. Fitted with a 1275cc engine producing around 68 brake horsepower, it managed 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 14 seconds, with a top speed close to 95 miles per hour. Cost-cutting on gearing and a focus on fuel economy blunted outright performance considerably. Motorsport magazine noted the range's broad spectrum, with the HLE clearly positioned at the slower end. Owners appreciated its practicality yet often wished for slightly more urgency joining motorways. Interestingly, the Maestro's dashboard used an early digital voice synthesizer system, warning drivers of faults aloud, a genuinely futuristic touch hidden inside a distinctly unhurried car. Few buyers expected quite this contrast between cabin technology and outright pace. But an even slower version of this same car was still to come. Number 4. Austin Maestro Diesel. After British Aerospace acquired the company in 1986, Austin badges disappeared, replaced largely by a naturally aspirated Perkins diesel unit the following year. Fleet buyers and economy-focused motorists were the target audience, chasing frugal running costs above everything else. Without a turbocharger, the direct-injection diesel produced modest power, translating into notably sluggish acceleration and a top speed well below its petrol siblings. The engineering reasoning was straightforward: maximum fuel efficiency meant minimal performance ambition. Contemporary reports openly acknowledged the model was, without forced induction, rather slow indeed. Owners accepted the trade-off, valuing economy over any sense of urgency on the road. Remarkably, this same diesel unit later gained a turbocharged upgrade in 1992, transforming the Maestro's fortunes dramatically, though by then the original naturally aspirated version had already earned its reputation. But what came next belonged to an entirely different kind of small British vehicle. Number 3. Reliant Fox. Built in Tamworth from 1983, the Fox offered small businesses and rural motorists a genuinely versatile four-wheeled utility vehicle. Configurable as pickup, estate, or van, it used Reliant's own 848cc aluminium engine through a 4-speed manual gearbox. Performance figures mirrored the featherweight Robin, with modest horsepower struggling against practical bodywork designed for carrying loads rather than covering ground quickly. The tiny capacity simply wasn't engineered for speed. Economy and low running costs were always the priority here. Enthusiast reviewers respected its ingenuity while acknowledging performance remained firmly secondary to usefulness. Owners, Often smallholders or tradespeople valued reliability and thrift over any sense of urgency whatsoever. Here's an unusual fact: the Fox's galvanized chassis borrowed directly from the earlier Reliant kitten, showing remarkable component recycling across Reliant's eccentric range. Can you imagine relying on this for daily deliveries? The strangest story hasn't appeared yet, and it belongs to our final two entries. Number 2. Ford Escort 1.1L. The Mark III Escort arrived in 1980 as Ford's front-wheel drive reinvention of Britain's best-selling family car, and the entry-level 1.1 targeted budget-conscious buyers who wanted the badge without the bigger bills. Company representatives, first-time drivers, and thrifty households made up much of the queue outside Ford dealerships that year. Under the bonnet sat a 1117cc engine producing just 54 brake horsepower, driving through a 4-speed manual gearbox. 0 to 60 miles per hour took around 14.2 seconds, a figure that felt distinctly leisurely against the sportier XR3 sitting proudly in the same showroom. Ford had deliberately detuned the smallest engine to protect fuel economy figures, sacrificing any real urgency in the process. Road testers were polite but unenthusiastic, noting the gap between the Escort's sporty image and this particular version's modest reality. Owners, mostly practical rather than passionate, rarely complained, valuing low running costs above red light getaways. Here's a detail rarely mentioned: this same platform, in XR3i and RS turbo form, became one of Britain's defining hot hatches, an almost comic contrast to the humble 1.1. Could this really share a family tree with the RS Turbo? Nothing, however, prepared Britain for what claimed the very top spot. Number 1. Reliant Rialto. Reliant replaced its beloved three-wheeled Robin in 1982 with the Rialto, a squarer, more aerodynamic fiberglass machine built at Tamworth for buyers chasing genuine economy above everything else. Motorcycle license holders and cost-conscious households, drawn by remarkably cheap running costs, made up the bulk of its keen following. Reliant kept the Robin's proven 848cc engine, still producing just 40 brake horsepower, through the same 4-speed manual gearbox. 0 to 60 miles per hour took around 13 seconds, but top speed remained stubbornly fixed at just 80 miles per hour, no better than the car it replaced. The company had rushed the Rialto to market using the Robin's existing mechanicals, saving development money but sacrificing any real improvement in outright pace. Trade reviews welcomed the smarter styling while noting performance had barely moved on at all. Owners, however, didn't seem to mind one bit. The Rialto sold so strongly that a 12-month waiting list built up within months of launch. Remarkably, despite looking entirely new, its underpinnings were pure early 1970s Robin, proving Reliant's talent for stretching old ideas impressively far. Could you have joined a fast-flowing motorway confidently in this? It genuinely struggled to match everyday traffic, exactly as promised at the very beginning. These 10 cars remind us that British motoring history isn't only measured in horsepower or headline figures. Slowness became its own kind of character, forging genuine affection between drivers and machines that demanded patience rather than performance. Families queued for them, tradespeople relied on them, and enthusiasts still restore them today, cherishing quirks that outlasted their outright pace. Speed clearly wasn't everything. Charm, ingenuity, and sheer Britishness carried these cars into history regardless. Which of these 10 would you have driven every single day, patience and all? Let us know in the comments below, and thank you sincerely for watching. We'll see you in the next amazing video.